Welcome, everyone, to the DeVory Darkins Show. It is November 10th, Monday, and this week we're going to be celebrating our veterans, okay? So we switched up the background for everybody, and if you're new here, this is all about common sense commentary for these uncommon times. If you do have a veteran in your life, thank them for their service, please. And for the people who are no longer with us, remember them, okay? Now, the stories today are pretty simple. Number one, we know that the Senate late last night, 8 Democrats in particular, voted to get this government back open, the 60-vote threshold to break the filibuster, which means the next step is they're going to have a simple majority vote that actually votes on the continuing resolution, which should happen today. And then it heads back to the House of Representatives, and they will have to vote. And it's just craziness the way this stuff works. But at any rate, we're going to be talking about the backlash that has occurred, meaning the Democrat Party essentially has turned on Chuck Schumer, okay? Even though he voted no, the fact that they ended up having this 60-vote threshold met, he's getting all of the backlash. And it really is, in my opinion, deserved because it's inevitable. Also, the president has offered a solution, which is a 50-year mortgage to the housing crisis. We're going to go into depth about that and answer the question, is that feasible and is that the right policy move? Okay. And remember, every Monday I want to dedicate to just focusing on the merits, doing the research with you guys as we go through these stories and scale back the opinion and the rhetoric. Okay. Now, let's start with a summary here of what happened over the weekend in case you were living your life like you should be doing. Here's where we're at with the government shutdown as a whole. Let's go ahead and play that.
It's been a stunning couple of hours here on Capitol Hill. Think about this. Think about the No Kings rallies, the massive rallies nationwide. Think about 40 days of a government shutdown. Think about last Tuesday's election results. All for what? The Democrats accepted an offer that was always on the table. There is about to be a reckoning in this party when the House comes back to the Hill. Here's what happened last night. 8 centrist Senate Democrats, they voted alongside Republicans to break the filibuster, and that unlocks the door to ending the government shutdown. Here's the deal. It is a CR, a continuing resolution to fund the government through the end of January. It restores SNAP benefits. It rehires workers who were laid off during the shutdown, and it also passes a couple of funding bills. The shutdown deal skips their crown jewel, the whole reason they were fighting in the first place, to extend the Obamacare subsidies. Instead, they got a promise to hold a vote on it in December. Let me be clear about this. It's not a vote right now. There's no guarantee it's going to pass, no guarantee the House would ever even take it up. Here are some of those Democrats explaining why they voted yes.
It wasn't working. How long would it take to not get a response to say it isn't working?
There was no vote that we were going to get on the Affordable Care Act, premium tax credits. We have a guaranteed vote by a guaranteed date on a bill that we will write, not that the Republicans will write.
Okay. So bottom line is what? Democrats have suffered a tremendous defeat. We are back where we started on October 1st, meaning all we needed was 8 Democrats to vote to reopen the government. Of course, as we know, that's why they coined it the Schumer shutdown. He didn't want to go along with it, and he weaponized the issue of ACA subsidies as a way to, in my opinion, hurt the people that he cares about. They care about federal workers. They care about the working class. They care about the 42 million people on SNAP. That's their words. But they were hurt in the process of them playing games. Now, what's more important is about what happens moving forward. Because as you guys know, the House has to come back in session. They should have already been in session, and we will get to that here shortly. But Schumer is in for a reckoning. There's no question about it. And already the post on X, the videos, the comments are coming through, and it's all about the fact that Schumer should go. And to give you guys an example of that, let's go to this clip here where MSNBC is essentially saying that this morning.
Should Chuck Schumer go?
And yet, yes, Chuck Schumer should go. I'm sorry to say Chuck Schumer should go. I've voted for him many times. I am ideologically quite aligned with where he is as a senator, but he's no longer capable of running this caucus. He's no longer capable of leading the Democratic Party. I am a lifelong. I mean, I'm an establishment Democrat, and I'm here to say that Bernie Sanders is much more in line with where I and many other Senate Democrats are today than Chuck Schumer is. And, if you would have asked me that 5 years ago, I would have laughed at you. So that just to underscore exactly how furious Democrats are today for putting the country through this without having an out.
Well, we knew it wasn't going to work. You guys should be furious that that you're so caught up in your into tribalism instead of focusing on principles. Principles say that they should have already voted to have the government open before October 1st, and then had the last 30 days to fight about ACA subsidies. They wasted so much time, if you think about it. It's fascinating. I'm telling you, the Democrat Party should be a case study on what not to do in politics, okay? Because they have essentially destroyed their party. No question about it. And every day that they continue to make a mistake, it's another day that the progressive, far left part of their party gains more power, gains more political cachet, okay? And that's not good for our country, by the way. We do not want a country where progressives are leading the Democrat Party, because if they get in charge, those centrists will go bye-bye, okay? They will get them out of there. Those centrists are definitely going to have some problems moving forward here. Okay, let's go to this clip from MSDNC. I just like to start off this video just seeing the reactions, okay? I think this is entertaining. They are perplexed by what happened last night. Take a look at this.
Can you explain how you interpret why this deal came together now, a few days after this blowout election where Democrats seem to be taking a victory lap, well, literally taking a victory lap, or at least had a victory? Why now would Democrats in the Senate decide to lay down their arms, potentially end this shutdown, when the terms that are being offered by Republicans don't seem to have changed?
I can't explain it because, to be frank, to me, it makes absolutely no sense. I'm completely perplexed by today's developments, or really the developments of the last few hours. On Tuesday, we essentially had the proof that the American people overwhelmingly were on the Democrats' side of this argument. Polls have been showing for weeks, over a month, that a pretty large number of Americans were with us. But people always question about the validity of polls. Where here we had on Tuesday the ultimate poll, and Democrats won everywhere.
And that's the mistake. They're trying to use Tuesday's election as a way to justify hurting the American people. That's craziness. Even Abigail Spanberger was on yesterday, on mainstream media, claiming or stating that the government needs to get back open. They should not be looking at Tuesday's election as some, launching point to continue to weaponize this government shutdown. So it is spiraling out of control. Now, as I told you guys, we're going to focus on the merits of their argument. And what I want to do right now is go to a simple question, which is, why is healthcare in America unaffordable? Do you guys know the answer to that question? Why is it that the federal government needs to provide subsidies? Is because Obamacare at its core is not affordable. If it was affordable, you would not need subsidies. What is the percentage that is being subsidized by the federal government? Do you guys know that answer? Somewhere between 80 to 90%. So you're telling me taxpayer dollars are subsidizing healthcare in America at a 90% clip, and it is still unaffordable. Even with the subsidies, it is not affordable. Now, why is that? Because the cost of healthcare has outpaced inflation by at least 40%. That's why. So no matter whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, a centrist, you don't align with any party, the fact remains that Obamacare is not the solution. It has only made the problem worse. Now, short term, people have gotten access to healthcare. No question about it. I'm not denying that. You know, that is a good thing, of course. But the problem is that healthcare premiums have continued to go up ever since Obamacare. So did it really do the thing that we thought it would do? No, it hasn't. And that's not a partisan position. That's what the results show. So even if the Republicans had caved and said, yep, let's vote on these ACA subsidies, let's extend it for a year, guys, we're nowhere near solving healthcare. There's no way, because again, the problem is healthcare in America is just unaffordable. Now, the question is, why? Well, let's ask AI for a second here. Let's go here to Perplexity and just ask, give me 3 main reasons why healthcare in the USA is unaffordable. Okay, let's see what it has to tell us here. High medical service and drug prices. Well, we know the president is doing something about drug cost. For instance, an MRI can cost up to 420% more in the United States than in Australia. That's ridiculous. Prescription drugs are often priced more than double those in other wealthy countries, contributing heavily to overall affordability. Administrative complexity and waste. The U.S. healthcare system is highly fragmented, driving up administrative costs due to duplicated services, inefficient resource use, and lack of coordination between providers and insurers. Here's the big one for me. Hospital consolidation and complex payment negotiations create further inefficiencies that inflate prices, meaning there's a monopoly in the hospital industry. Inadequate insurance and coverage gaps. Many Americans have insurance with high premiums, deductibles, or limited coverage, leading to significant out-of-pocket costs, delayed care, or medical debt, even among the insured population. Medicaid and other safety nets face cutbacks, worsening disparities, especially for low-income and minority populations. That last point I disagree with, but fine. Okay, so there's a multitude of reasons. But this is what Democrats want to fight for. They're trying to defend a broken healthcare system. Now, let me just show you how crazy this stuff got. Last night, Bernie Sanders had this to say, okay, about this whole situation, because we know he's for universal healthcare. Let's play that.
And that the way the process has been developed, it is impossible to delay the votes that are going to take place. And if that were not the case, that is certainly what I would do, because I think it is important that the American people fully understand what is being voted on today. Everybody in America knows that our current healthcare system is broken. It is dysfunctional. It is cruel. It is by far the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and the only healthcare system of any major country that does not guarantee healthcare to all people as a human right, covering every man, woman, and child. We are unique in that respect. And yet tonight, what this Senate is about to do is make a horrific situation even worse. So let's be clear what this vote is about. If this vote succeeds, over 20 million Americans are going to see at least a doubling in their premiums in the Affordable Care Act. In my state of Vermont,
Yeah. Well, they've already seen a double in their premiums since 2018, when it passed and went into effect, Obamacare. So I'm not buying that. All right, let's go to this. Well, hold on. The merit of what he's saying is true. The premiums will go up if ACA subsidies are not extended. My point to what I'm saying is the premiums have been going up regardless of subsidies. All right. Now, I asked ChatGPT the same question because, again, I want to make sure we're educated here. I asked it a very simple question. If Obamacare is supposed to be affordable, then why does the federal government have to subsidize at a 90% level? Because the underlying cost of American healthcare itself is not affordable. The subsidies don't make healthcare cheaper. They just hide the real price from the consumer. Number one, medical costs are inflated. Hospital consolidation, drug monopolies, and excessive billing drive prices far beyond what normal wages can cover. The ACA didn't fix costs, it shifted them. Instead of tackling hospitals and big pharma directly, the law used taxpayer money to cover the gap between what coverage costs and what people can afford. And third, that's why 90% need subsidies. Without massive federal assistance, premiums would be unaffordable for most working class families and the market would collapse. Bottom line, Obamacare didn't make healthcare affordable. It made expensive healthcare payable through federal subsidies, masking a broken pricing system. Now that just it's disheartening when you read it, right? It really is. Even if AI is exaggerating, even if half of that is true, it's a day of reckoning. No question. And it's coming. I mean, if you think about it, who's going to pay for when this system goes belly up? It's going to be our children and our grandchildren, unfortunately. All right, let's go to what Speaker of the House Mike Johnson had to say as a reaction this morning to this government shutdown.
So air travel has been grinding to a halt in many places. And as of Sunday, nearly half of all domestic flights and U.S. flights were either canceled or delayed. And it's a very serious situation. So I'm saying that by way of reminder. I'm stating the obvious to all my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats in the House. You need to begin right now returning to the Hill. We have to do this as quickly as possible. And we look forward to the government reopening this week so Congress can get back to our regular legislative session. We have a lot of business to do, as you all know, and we will be working in earnest. There'll be long days and long nights here for the foreseeable future to make up for all this lost time that was imposed upon us. I want to close with something that's important. I think it's important to say that this is genuine. I mean this sincerely. We applaud the 7 Senate Democrats and 1 independent senator who did the right thing. They decided to put principle over their personal politics. And my urgent plea of all my colleagues in the House, and that means every Democrat in the House, is to think carefully, pray, and finally do the right thing and help us to bring an end to the pain of the American people. This has gone on too long. Too many people have suffered, and it's long overdue. That's the update I wanted to give you this morning. There are probably lots of questions, but I'm going to get a lot of my own questions answered later today, so stay tuned for more. Thanks.
Okay, so my beef with Speaker Johnson is very clear. And he might have been doing it under the direction of the president, for the record. The House should have been in session this entire time. Air traffic controllers had to go to work. A lot of federal employees had to continue to work, but Congress could just go home and sit out. That's craziness. And they got paid. See, the House should have been in session already, passing pieces of legislation to further what 77 million people voted for. Okay? That agenda. But they haven't done anything. So now they got to play catch up. And we already know they only work 60% of this entire year, by the way. So they don't even really work full-time hours. And then when they do have to finally vote, and maybe that vote takes 8 hours, they start complaining. I mean, I'm telling you, it's a walking conflict of interest at every turn when it comes to the people in Congress. The only solution, in my opinion, is really twofold. Number one, the leadership in both chambers need to change the rules to provide leverage over members of Congress to do their job. Meaning, if the GDP declines by 1%, you are ineligible for re-election. If the government shutdowns, you do not receive a paycheck. It's fascinating that Rand Paul wants to defend that, by the way. Okay. And the second thing is get Citizens United overturned. Nothing will change as long as they are slaves to the donors, the lobbyists, these institutions. All right. Now, let's see what you guys have to say. Let me read a few comments. Let's see here. He did not do it at the direction of the president. How do you know that? How do you know that? Do you know people who took part in meetings concerning the White House and Congress that talked about why the House should be out of session? Do you know these people personally? I do. All right, let's keep going here. Yeah, make no mistake, those Democrats got hammered by their constituents. I agree. Yeah. And it's crazy because you need centrists in the government. We cannot have two parties that are just extremely polarized. We need to get them back to the center because that obviously breeds common ground and compromise. It's the only thing to get things done in Congress. Because the Senate did not repeal the filibuster. So they promised to vote to open the government. No. I think you're confused. No, they promised to hold a vote on ACA subsidies, but they don't say when and how that's going to happen. The 60 votes from last night breaks the filibuster, which means with a simple majority, the government will be open. They're going to hold that vote today. And all Republicans will probably vote for it, except one, Rand Paul, right? Because he votes no on everything. Boomers are not allowing houses. They're stealing your fiduciary future while securing their socialism security by importing the third world future, integrating. Yeah, that reminds me of the point I want to make. So the more that we delay the inevitable, when I say we, the federal government, the inevitable should have been a recession. Whatever things cost now in your life would probably be half of that if a recession took place. Okay? Because they didn't do that, what's going to happen is, as time rolls on, socialism is going to be attractive to a lot of people, especially the younger generations. You see, the failure to allow the recession to happen continues to create the high cost of living in America, which the people who are suffering the most from that are younger generations. They feel like they're not getting ahead. Even if they do have a full-time job, they're still struggling. Now, I think financial literacy plays a huge role in that, but there's no denying there's a difference between 2019 and 2025 financially. So, because our leaders or representatives in Congress refuse to do the right thing, they're going to make a great case for socialism. We know socialism doesn't work. Doesn't matter. Right now, a lot of people feel capitalism doesn't work. That is the risk that that's occurring right in front of our eyes right now. I mean, we just talked about healthcare. So healthcare is high. Cost of living is high. Utilities are high. What do you want people to do? You want people to believe that capitalism is the solution? Listen, I believe that. I'm a product of it, okay? And I 100% support it, no question. I do not support socialism whatsoever. But it'd be naive to think that people who don't understand capitalism and have not fixed their financial situation, it'd be naive to believe that they won't have a certain attraction to socialism. It's just a reality. If something isn't working for years on end, sooner or later, you're going to start looking for another option. And that's why I said, the people in Congress, they're playing with fire. They're going to drive this country into a direction that will lead to voters voting in radical policies and radical politicians. And most of the time, those radical policies will destroy this country. And I wish they would just wake up and realize that. Let's see here. Did we get any super chats on YouTube? No, we didn't. Okay. All right, let's keep going here. We are going to this 50-year mortgage. It's a great segue, by the way, because I definitely want to get into this and dissect this particular policy, okay? Now, before we get into that story, let's play this message from today's sponsor, American Financing. All right, so I have a question for the homeowners out there, and this is pretty serious. What if you could delay your next 2 mortgage payments? I'm talking about putting in that money back into your pocket while we head into the holidays. Well, you could do that if you call American Financing today, because if you're feeling stretched like all the other Americans out there where they're putting expenses like gas and bills and gifts for the holidays on their credit cards, you know the interest rates are insane. They're in the 20s and 30s. That's why American Financing can show you how to take your home's equity, pay off that debt with an interest rate that's in the low fives. And their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving people just like you every single month on an average of $800 a month without any upfront fees. So call today before it's too late. 866-890-9392, 866-890-9392, or go to americanfinancing.net/DeVory. Okay. I want to show you guys something really quickly. I want to actually circle back on something here. I want to make sure you guys seen it for yourself. Here's what Ro Khanna had to say immediately after this vote. Senator Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced. If you can't lead the fight to stop healthcare premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for? My pushback to Ro Khanna would be, you guys have been dealing with high insurance premiums from the get-go. What are you talking about? What have you done to fix that? Nothing, except extend it, kick it down the road, make it worse. It's fascinating. So you're going to blame Chuck Schumer for the party's incompetence, okay? There's that. And then this is another good one. Somebody took a screenshot of what happened on X with a lot of people who are on blue cries, as I like to call it. I just want to read a couple of them because I think it's funny. I think Senate folders are significantly underestimating how effing angry Democratic voters are at them. You know, I have a hard time believing it's majority of Democrats who feel this way. I think it's progressives that are angry. I think moderate and centrist individuals, and particularly independents who really decide elections, I think they're angry at just the incompetence of the government shutdown as a whole. They wanted it to be over. Here's a good one. I don't like the phrase moderate Democrat to describe people who folded. Caving to Trump is the extremist position. That's fascinating. What's another good one? Never forget who sold us out. They put the names here. Here's a good one. Senators on the brink of retirement who lived full, wealthy lives and never feared the loss of their own health care, voting for their constituents to die from their inability to afford the same as treasonous. See, the fascinating thing about all this outrage is, why aren't you guys mad at former President Obama? He lied to you. He lied. He said Obamacare would make healthcare affordable. It hasn't. See, this is why Bernie Sanders, I'm telling you, his approach is going to start getting more attention. His approach is going to start getting more attention. We are the only country that does not provide universal health care as far as the top wealthy countries in the world. We're the only one who doesn't do it. And that's why Republicans need to get their head out of their rear and start actually coming up with practical solutions, because I haven't heard one yet. And if there are some, it's bits and pieces, okay? There hasn't been, hey, here is our full health care plan from top to bottom and why it is better than what we have right now. I haven't heard that. All right, let's move to the next story here. 50-year mortgages. Interesting.
Trump administration is, quote unquote, working on a plan to introduce a 50-year fixed rate mortgage as a way to incentivize young home buyers. That's what a top official now says over the weekend after President Trump posted, we'll show you a picture online, comparing his proposal to the 30-year mortgage plan introduced by President Roosevelt as part of his New Deal during the Great Depression. And also this morning, new data is coming out from Coldwell Banker, offering a new picture of the state of the American dream, essentially, finding that a majority of Americans who want to buy a home are delaying major life decisions like getting married or having kids until they can buy that home, just as the typical age of first-time buyers is now climbing to an all-time high of 40 years old. Joining me right now is Jason Weil. He's the president of Coldwell Banker. It's great to have you here. Before we dive into your report, the data you have, which is important for everyone to see, a 50-year mortgage. It would be a big change, and one that the president says would help make home buying more affordable. Does that sound like a good idea to you?
Well, good morning, Kate. Thank you for having me. Still a little too early to tell whether that will have much impact. Certainly affordability and inventory are issues that we have to solve for, and potentially this is a part of that solution. With first-time home buyers, though, most of the time, the biggest obstacle is the acquisition costs, not so much the monthly payment. So that also has to be a part of this long-term solution.
Okay, let me just make it easy because this guy's supposed to be an expert. Just give me the bottom line up front, will you please? Okay, the bottom line up front is no, this isn't really going to be helpful. Why? Because it's just treating the symptoms. We talk about it all the time on this show. Congress and particularly the federal government, including the president, they have a habit of trying to solve the symptoms, treat the symptoms. They don't want to treat the root cause. The root cause is a housing crisis. There's not enough homes, and if there are in certain markets, there's not enough people to buy those homes. Why? Because they can't even qualify to buy that home right now. You go try to get a mortgage right now and see what happens. Like, these banks are stingy right now. Why? Because interest rates are still high. This is what happens. When the interest rates are higher, that's when these banks and these lenders get all crazy when it comes to trying to lend money. They don't want to do it. You can have over a 700 credit score, no debt, and they're still going to find a reason not to give it to you. It's fascinating. I'll give you a personal story. So when we lived in California, we had a neighbor. She owned her home, okay? She... let's just make the math simple. If the home was valued at $200,000, she had at least $140,000 in equity. Okay, so she was in the positive side. Anyway, she goes down to her local credit union. Okay, because she is a teacher and they have something called Employer or Education Employers Credit Union (EECU) in California. At any rate, she goes there because she wants to get solar on her home because her electricity bill at one time was $800. I'm telling you guys, people who live in California, people who live outside of California, they don't realize how ridiculous it is in California, okay? And that's not because she's just blasting the AC all day. It's because the price per kilowatt hour is the highest in the nation, okay? So, and she works during the day, so she's not even home. But anyways, so she goes down to the local credit union to get a loan to pay for solar because she doesn't want to pay for it as a lease because you'll pay more money in the end over the course of 20, 30 years. So she wants to get a loan and just pay it cash, okay? Well, you know what they told her? And by the way, she has a 730 credit score, no debt, except her house. You need a cosigner. You need a cosigner. Now, why would a local credit union tell a teacher, which that's the whole purpose of the credit union, to provide banking to people in education in California, by the way, it's in their name. Why would they tell her that she needs a cosigner? It's because right now interest rates are too high. They're not very lenient when it comes to lending money. So even if you told the president, figure a way out to build more homes, let's drop this 50-year mortgage, it's not going to make a difference because the banks aren't lending right now. So that's, again, let's treat the root cause of it. The interest rates are too high. The banks are too stingy. Now, obviously, if I was a bank, I'm salivating right now because that means I'm going to make more money over the course of 50 years. I'm sure they will take that deal. But just on the merits of financial literacy, we have to understand, buying a home back in 1980 is different than buying a home in 2025. Now, Dave Ramsey's of the world still believe that the number one goal after you have no debt and you save up your money is to buy a house. I'm of the opinion that for the new generation, that isn't a reality right now. You got to have some serious cash. Unless you're going to buy a small home, 2-bedroom, 1 bath maybe, or a townhome or something like that. Even townhomes in California are $500,000. You don't have a yard. You have a community pool. I mean, what are you really getting with that? So what is the solution? Because obviously we could talk about the problems all day long. Okay. Well, The solution is, number one, don't get yourself into debt right now. It's just not a smart thing to do. Not right now, it isn't. And I would be saving money. And if you are hell bent on buying a house, save up the money to buy most of it in cash. That's what Americans should be doing. Stop taking out loans for everything. Just save up the money and buy. Or you can rent. And depending on which market you're in, renting is much more favorable than owning a home right now. Now, I'll show you this clip here shortly, but let me just say this, just so you guys know I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm a firm believer right now in renting in the short term, and then in the long term, you should buy a home. Why? Well, in the short term, if you know you don't have that much money to buy a home anyway, you should be renting and then
Let's talk about this report
saving the money
coming out,
that
just
you can.
releasing this morning.
Sorry about that. What you should be doing right now, short term, is renting, okay, and saving the money so you can buy later, okay? Why? Because if you already are struggling with money and you try to force yourself to buy a house now, you have to understand there are unforeseeable costs with that. That happens every year. Your AC goes out. You got a leak in the roof all of a sudden. Your toilet doesn't work. It floods. You have to replace the floor. You won't see it coming, but it happens. Every homeowner in the chat can confirm that. So I'm saying if you have money and you've saved and your credit's great, buy a home, sure. Or you have this extra money to invest, sure. Or you own a home and you want to take the equity and buy another home and then fix it up, rent it out, take the equity, buy another home, yes. But for the working class individual out there who's living paycheck to paycheck, remember those federal employees that we saw so many times that were saying, "Oh man, I can't put food on the table. I have to go down to the food bank." They have no business buying a home right now. So those people should rent first, save money, and then buy long term. Because it just doesn't make sense to get a loan and pay for something you don't even have the money for. And you have a job that's at risk of being shut down in any moment because you work for the federal government. That is the reality. Now let's go to Charles Payne on Fox News and what he has to say about this idea.
Here we go. The White House is floating this idea. Bill Pulte is saying, thanks to President Trump, we can indeed work on the 50-year mortgage, a complete game changer. How does that work in dollars? Here you go. 30-year fixed mortgage right now. You're paying $2,038 a month, principal and interest on a $400,000 home. At the bottom, under 50 years, you'd save a couple $100 a month at $1,822 principal and interest. That is proposed. Do you like this idea?
I do not like this idea. And again, it depends on how much the house costs and what, but if you just took a 4% interest rate, for a 30-year, it would be $2,300. For a 50-year, it would be $1,900. So you're saving almost $500 a month in terms of affordability. But by the time you finish paying this bad boy off, the 30-year, you pay $359,000 versus a 50-year, almost $700,000, right?
Oh.
So it's just a gargantuan difference just to make people feel better, you know, and that's not the way to do this, right? There's so many other ways. I feel so strongly about the momentum that we'll have going into next year. The one big beautiful bill kicks in. We'll have a more accommodative Federal Reserve. I think economic activity is going to build. Companies will be encouraged to build here because they'll be able to write a lot of that off. I think we're on the precipice of an economic boom, and with lower mortgage rates, that will help the housing market a lot. So I would rather see President Trump do some other things with that tariff money.
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset. I don't believe the government should be handing out any money right now. I don't care if you want to say 2,000 dividend checks from tariffs. I don't care if you want to say 50-year mortgages. Let's go through the concept of inflation, folks, because a lot of people on X think, listen, I didn't go to college for an economic degree, for the record, but I'm not an idiot, and neither are you. If you just do the research and ask the basic question, what causes inflation? What causes inflation is when cash is injected into the market, causes demand to go up. When the supply cannot meet the demand, inflation occurs. Go back to COVID. We got one COVID check. Then we got a second COVID check. Then we got a third COVID check. And then we got PP loans. And then we got extra unemployment benefits. You guys following? All of that money was injected into the economy. What happened? Inflation went up because everybody and their mom wants to go buy things. It's the way the American consumer is programmed. Now, you on an individual level in your own anecdotal experience, maybe that's not you. Maybe you're not a big spender. Maybe you're not interested in all that. But you represent a small percentage of Americans. That's why most Americans are in debt, because they lack financial literacy. They have a spending problem. So if the government hands out money, people are going to take that $2,000 and they're going to buy products with it. And if you give it to enough Americans, it will spike demand. And right now, where we're at with stagflation, technically, that wouldn't be a smart play. Take the money and pay down debt. And I've been saying it, the best thing overall is just let the recession happen. Let's get it over with. Because no matter what the president does, folks, and this is not a President Trump problem. This is a federal government. This is the Federal Reserve. This is Congress after Congress continuing to make the same mistake over and over, which is kicking the can down the road. They don't have the stomach to allow a recession to happen. So it puts us in a position where the government wants to print more money. They want to hand out short-term relief for long-term pain. Let me say that again. The federal government has a habit of handing out short-term relief, but in the end, we're going to have long-term pain. Now, obviously, we got to see what happens with the one big, beautiful bill. But at this point, when we look at the numbers, I'm not too sure that's going to solve the problem of how high costs are at this point. And most of it didn't happen under Trump. That happened under the Biden administration. But to expect President Trump to come in and take all prices back to pre-2019, guys, I don't believe in something that's impossible, but that's impossible because they won't let a recession happen. What he should have did, as soon as he got elected and he was sworn in on January 20th, he should have told Scott Bessent and his entire cabinet, do whatever we have to do to force a recession. And let's just get it out of the way. And although he's going to serve for 4 years, I think it would have been easy to just blame the Biden administration for that, in my opinion. But he's trying to fix something that I don't think he can. I don't think he can fix high costs. Okay. Now, he can do something about gas and fuel, but he can't do anything about electricity costs. Just look at California. He can't do anything about these grocery prices unless he goes in and do what Democrats want to do, progressives want to do, and force these companies or not force them, but control prices when it comes to groceries. They can't do that. That'll make things worse. So I think we have to understand the full picture here. Okay, let's actually go back and hear more about what this analyst had to say.
Let's talk about this report coming out, just releasing this morning from Coldwell Banker. Essentially, the way when I was reading through it, it seems to tell a story of an American dream, at the very least, delayed. 7 in 10 people putting major life decisions, like I mentioned, like getting married and having kids, all on hold until they can buy a home. What does this mean? What did you learn from this?
Well, what we can share is 85% of the respondents still believe that home ownership is a part of the American dream. So that demand is there. And as you alluded to, 7 in 10 or more than 7 in 10 aspiring homeowners are delaying major moments in life, whether that is marriage, children, changing jobs or a profession, until they can buy a home. And ultimately, we've got first-time homeowners that have these affordability challenges that ultimately are, and you alluded to it earlier today, that age 40 is the average age of first-time homebuyers. And that is up significantly. 53% of non-homeowners today believe that they will be 40 years or older before they become a homeowner.
Okay. Let's talk about a couple of things that he stated. I don't understand why people are putting off marriage. In fact, if you're looking for a financial break, you should get married because there's better tax benefits to that. You see, the root cause to the problem most of the time in our lives, ladies and gentlemen, is a lack of understanding the situation, okay? Most of the time, we're too busy reacting to a situation instead of understanding the situation, okay? To understand a situation is to study it at its root cause, okay? First thinking principles here, okay? So when someone says, well, I'm holding off getting married because I can't afford a home, that has nothing to do with getting married, bro. What are you talking about? Take your wife down to the courthouse, sign the papers, and get it done. What do you mean you're waiting for a home? That is so annoying to me when I hear that stuff. well, I don't make enough money. What does that got to do with you getting married? That's two separate things. Now, I am of the opinion that men should have their financial situation in order before getting married. I do believe that, but I'm also not naive. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. The money I make today is nowhere near the money I made when I married my wife, so I get it. But I didn't use, I don't make enough money. That's dumb. And I might be harsh, but I don't understand. Like, either get married or don't. Okay. But don't be like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Right. It adds unnecessary pressure is what I'm saying. It creates anxiety. It also causes procrastination with people. So just on that point alone, you might be better off just getting married for the people who really want to do that, instead of delaying it. So that's the first thing. Secondly, let's go back to purchasing a home as far as the American dream is concerned. I'm of the opinion today that I don't believe the American dream is owning a home. I think the American dream should be financial independence. That doesn't mean you own a home. To reach financial independence means you take more money in than you spend and you live the lifestyle that you have chosen. Okay. And no matter what happens in the economy, you're good. Excuse me. Now, you could accomplish that multitude of ways. You could buy a home, right? And rent it out, use it for Airbnb, right? Allow it to make money for you, leverage the equity, go buy another home, and use the passive income to fund your lifestyle. That would be a form of financial independence. But it's going to take time to get to that point, right? I think that is the American dream, in my opinion, to be able to live the life you want comfortably without stressing out about money. I'm not too sure buying a house is absolutely required for you to feel that way. I'm also of the opinion, just so you guys know, that there are benefits to owning a home and renting. Okay, renting is great right now because you're not responsible for anything. And they got to rent the home. They got to rent the apartment. They have to rent. If they don't rent, they're losing money. So they need you more than you need them. That's what people don't understand about renting. You are in demand, okay? So my point here is that when something breaks, you're not paying out of pocket, okay? That's the beauty of renting. So you could take that extra money that you would spend if you bought the home and then save long-term to buy the home later, okay? Because you're going to need the money. You're going to need a down payment, right? And when the AC breaks, okay, especially if you're not buying a brand new one, a brand new home, you're going to pay, especially if you live in an area where AC costs are high, like California, for an example. That's how I know this. The home we used to live in, we were renting, the AC broke at least 3 times. I always felt bad for this guy. Even when we didn't live in a home, we lived in a townhome, the AC broke. Homeowner had to come out and fix it. So there's always expenses out there that people don't see coming. But the fact of the matter overall is consumers as a whole right now, they're not very confident in the economy. That's the unfortunate part. And it's not President Trump's fault. It's his responsibility to find some way to fix it. But it really happened under the Biden administration. Let's go to this next clip. This is CNN, I guess, making it out to be Trump's fault. Let's watch.
President Trump is trying to sell, the American folks aren't buying, and we can see it pretty simply here. Take a look here. This is consumer sentiment, the current conditions. Consumer sentiment can be the current conditions or it can be future expectations. We're looking at current conditions. And get this, according to the University of Michigan, we are dealing with the worst ever view of current conditions dating all the way back since 1951. This is record-breaking in the way you don't want to be breaking records. And get this, Kate, it is down 30%. Consumer sentiment of current conditions down 30% from January when Donald Trump took office. No bueno.
Yeah. So I want to know what the percentage was that declined under the Biden administration. Actually, let's look that up together. Why don't we look that up? I'm curious on that. Let's go to here. Why don't we look that up together? Consumer sentiment from 2021 to 2024. June 2022, a record low, 50%. In 2023, sentiment stayed low with monthly numbers in the 60s or high 50s. In 2024, there was a little bit of rebound up to 76, 79%. And now it had dropped low again. Okay. Now, let's do this. Explain the true cost of a 50-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage. A 50-year mortgage costs drastically more in total interest than a 30-year mortgage. We all know that, of course. Even if the monthly payment looks more affordable, the extended terms trades short-term comfort for massive long-term expense. Didn't I just say that? I think the moral of today's episode is what? The federal government is offering us short-term relief in exchange for long-term pain. We need to reject that. Okay? Step-by-step explanation with an example. Assume a $500,000 loan at a 6.5% fixed rate. 30 years, $3,100 monthly payment. That is crazy. 50-year, $2,840. I mean, that's what? $300 difference, $200 and some change. See, this is the part that makes me sick when I see mortgage and the schedule. Regardless if you do a 30 or a 50. If you do a 30, we are no longer in the age where the value of the home would supersede the interest that you paid. Okay? We're past that at this point. So you go buy a $500,000 home. On average, the real estate appreciates 3 to 4% a year. Okay? So I'll ask it to do the math here shortly. But the point is, this person would be paying $1.1 million in total to the bank. The banks love it. See, that's why I don't knock what Dave Ramsey says. Because if you make enough money that you can save, you should be saving money and then buy something. Because the cost the cost to borrow is ridiculous right now. A 50-year mortgage would put you at $1.7 million. Total interest, 1.2. You should throw up when you read that. You're telling me I'm going to pay you more interest than what I paid the house? That just doesn't make any sense. So here's my question for it. The average appreciation for a home versus the interest on a 50-year mortgage, please explain. Yeah, 3 to 7% annually. Okay, in many cases, there it is. The interest cost still outpaces the value growth, meaning you pay a lot more than what the home might gain in value. Unless we have another COVID, right? Which I'm not too sure we will, not right now. I mean, that's the only way. Listen, anyone who bought a home in 2019 and 2020, right before COVID hit, and has not sold that home, their value of their home, it has exceeded the interest they're paying for that home. But that is not something that happens all the time. That's rare. Okay? Long run, U.S. home value growth, about 3 to 5%. Most recent 5-year periods, 8 to 9% annual average. Example, if you buy a home for $500,000, it appreciates 4% per year. In 30 years, it becomes $1.62 million. That's ignoring the costs, the taxes, and obviously the interest. So putting them side by side, just to wrap this up, if you buy for $400K, appreciate 4% in 50 years, the value of that home should be $2.84 million. That's crazy. But if you take a 50-year loan with interest paid, you're spending big to get that future value, and the future value is nominal, not inflation adjusted. So real gain may be much smaller. I think you guys are getting the gist here. Okay? See, this is the part that people are not taught in school, unfortunately. I'm not raging against people buying a home. I just don't think people should buy a home if you're violating financial literacy principles. It's like people think, oh, I got to own a home first before I get married. I got to own a home first before I do this, before I do that. That's like saying, you know what? I'll start doing the right thing as soon as X happens. That's not going to happen. That's a mind trap, okay? If you're going to do something, you do it now. Make a decision. So if you want to get married now. You don't got to put it off. Just get it done. Go to the courthouse, sign the paperwork. Done. Well, you know, I'll start working out as soon as January 1st comes around. You don't need to wait till January 1st, bro. Start working out right now. So that's what I'm saying. Step one every single time to the problems in America starts with our mindset. We want to wait for the perfect conditions. No, you start now. You start where you're at. If you're only making $50,000 a year, you start where you're at. Okay? Maybe you're only able to save $500 a month. Maybe you're only able to save $200 a month. It doesn't matter. You got to get in the habit of saving. But if you're not in the habit of saving, it doesn't matter how much money you make. You're still going to blow it because you're in the habit of blowing money. We see that with athletes all the time. Okay? That's why I said mindset's number one. It's our habits that are dictating what's happening to us here. Now, when you combine that with a federal government who is too busy trying to spin us into oblivion, you're going to have some problems, right? You're going to have some problems. It's a perfect storm. So what should we do about it? What should we do about it? Well, I think what needs to happen first is education. We got to get the right information, okay? And the right information would be, hey, don't spend money you don't have. I don't care how nice it looks, okay? I don't care if your cousin bought it, right? I mean, the problem, if, for example, just my own personal experience, the problem in the black community is we have not gotten rid of that habit. The black community cares more, and I'm not talking about every black person out there, by the way, but the culture of the community cares more about Jordans, the way they dress, their jewelry, materialistic things. That's why African Americans are the biggest consumers in the market. We spend money more on products than any other race in our country, and we only make up 13% of the population. Why? Because we lack financial literacy. But if I looked at the culture of people who are Indian, if I looked at the culture of people who are Jewish, or looked at the culture of people who are Asian, they don't have that problem because they understand financial literacy. It's passed down from one generation to the next. See, it's things that we can fix on our own. We don't need the government to fix this. It starts within our own home at an individual level. So my type of parenting, my wife and I, our son, this man ain't going to get anything. I'm not buying this guy anything. He's not going to have a cell phone. He doesn't need nice clothes and nice shoes. He needs to understand the principles of what's going to make him successful in life. And he's got to face resistance from a young age. But we've had this generation, because they were parented so hard or they thought their parents were too strict, they were too soft on their children. And now look at them. They're unprepared for success. At any rate, I think that transcends in so many topics in our country. So that's why I said it always starts with understanding. The lack of understanding is what gets us in trouble. Not understanding credit cards, not understanding budgeting, not understanding economics, not understanding how inflation occurs, not understanding the interest rates when we borrow money, not understanding how to earn money in this new economy. These are all things that we got to continue to push down to the younger generation, because if we don't, they will continue to be more attracted to socialism. Let me say that again. If we do not take the time to focus our efforts on educating the younger generation about how they can improve their financial situation, they will turn to socialism, folks. History has shown us that. And we're already seeing it in New York. All right. Let me get to some questions and then we'll wrap up here. Yeah, Gen Z's value system and outlook has shifted much from previous generations. We can relate to Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. They don't want to marry unless ridiculously financially established. The problem is I agree with you, by the way. The problem with that mindset is they're placing unrealistic expectations on themselves. They're actually placing unnecessary stress. It's crazy how much people will go into debt over a marriage, meaning a wedding, instead of taking that money and investing or taking that money and saving it. That's what I'm saying. It's a lack of financial literacy. Getting married doesn't cost any money. It might cost, what, $100, the fee at the local courthouse or whatever. It doesn't cost any money. Now, when my wife and I, we hit 7 years, we're going to do 5 years. When we reach 5 years, we're going to do a wedding, like a destination event, a celebration. I don't think people should do a wedding in the beginning. I think you should go down to the courthouse, get it signed, and let's figure out if you're really going to be married. People go into debt over a wedding, and then they divorce within 5 years. It's interesting. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Gen Z, they have to get the right information. They don't need to be rich. They don't need to be rich. They need to understand how money works. Now, to tell someone who's broke and is struggling financially that they need to understand how money works is like talking to a wall. They're not listening to any of that. Now, the person who's past the stubborn phase and have suffered enough inconvenience and pain, those people will listen. And that, again, is mindset. Sometimes we're not in the receiving mindset. We don't want to hear it. Right? And if you're 21 years old, okay, and you're struggling, it's already enough you're 21 years old. You don't listen to anybody, okay? Especially if you are a guy. 21-year-old men don't listen to anybody, guys, okay? I hope we all understand that. Now, they may hear what you're saying, but that doesn't mean they're listening. And they're still in this whole reaction mode. They're not going to start thinking until they're later in their 20s, maybe 30s. So the hope is that they have enough, guidance or role models in their life that prevents them from making a catastrophic mistake. I'm optimistic. I think if a man can make it through his 20s without screwing up worldly, he'll be fine. He'll figure it out. He'll start thinking and then making better choices. I think what happens is if you do something terrible, like, I don't know, going to prison in your 20s because you want to break the law, or, you go into debt too much, right? You start maxing out credit cards, all this other stuff. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Good to see. Thank you, Ricky Sky. Good to see a guy like you preaching responsibility, DeVory, not stupidity. Thank you. I appreciate that. Listen, I'm not trying to I hope I don't come off as trying to tell you guys how to live. What I am trying to communicate here to the best way I can at this point, because this is the best I can do it. I'm going to continue to get better, obviously, at articulating, because through repetition. My goal here is I'm encouraging the people who follow me, because I know a lot of you people are not 18 years old, obviously. But you might have people who are 18 years old in your life. And I'm hoping I'm passing on my optimism to you, and you pass on that optimism to them. No matter what, we have to approach the younger generation with not doom and gloom. We have to give them hope. We got to get them to understand that they can't overcome this. They can't wait for the federal government to fix it, because the federal government just make it worse. We still live in capitalism, so they can overcome this and improve their financial situation. But it's just going to take time. And that right there is what most people can't stomach, is how much time are you willing to eat crap in order to finally eat good, right? I'm not too sure many people are willing to pay a price. And that brings me to the end of today's live show. Short-term relief for long-term pain violates one of the most timeless success principles in history. You must pay a price for what you want. Right? Napoleon Hill said there's a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. Okay? You're not ready for what you want unless you believe you can have it. If you believe you can improve your financial situation, you'll pay the price for that. You will happily accept these sacrifices. You'll do whatever it takes. You will move. You'll switch careers. You'll sell your home. You'll sell your car. You'll get rid of all this materialistic stuff you don't need. You'll sell your video games. You will pay a price. And that's the question for the American people, because we know the people in Washington are not willing to pay a price. That price should have been let the recession happen. They're not willing to do that. It violates the success principle. We have to pay a price for what we want. It's not my opinion. This is something that's happened throughout time. Again, if you're living in California and you're struggling financially and you're making good money, number one is probably financial literacy. Will you pay the price of saying, hey, you know what? Let's stop all these conveniences. Let's stop the subscriptions. Let's stop eating out so much. And let's just eat at home. But we've become a convenience-driven society. And I believe the people who are financially well off are people who, cut through that. They don't get caught up in that stuff. That doesn't mean you're not going to spend money on something stupid every now and then. But overall, your lifestyle should be, hey, we're not going to buy stuff we really don't need, to the point where it's putting us in a terrible financial situation, right? So we have to pay a price. The founding fathers paid a price. Millions of Americans during the Civil War paid a price, okay? Every single world war we've had paid a price. So there's no excuse. And that's who I think about as we go into Veterans Day tomorrow. I always think about the people who have come before us, by the way. This stream is about to get rated on Rumble as a record, just so you guys understand. If you guys want to come back in, you can. That's who I think about as we go into tomorrow and this entire week. There are so many men who woke up in World War II, 18 years old, woke up, got the letter in the mail, the knock on the door, left home and never came back. I don't want to hear about sacrifice. I can't do this. I can't do that. We live in this most privileged world. They want to talk about white privilege. No, let's talk about American privilege. Okay? We have the privilege to screw off for a majority of our life and still become financially wealthy around the age of 60 if we wanted to. But why not just take advantage now? Why not just pay the price now? So many people have paid the price for us to have the freedoms we have today. Why not take advantage of that now? That's why, me personally, I don't have patience for incompetence. I'm not perfect. I just don't have patience for people who move slow. That's the one lesson I got from the military. Move with a sense of urgency. We have a purpose here. Let's get to it. We have work. We got to be serving people. Who am I helping today? All right, these are the ideas that runs through my mind. I think that's why I've gotten to where I've gotten to in life. Obviously, the grace of God, and there's no question about that. My upbringing, where my mother, she didn't play any games. But yeah, I just think about the men and women who have paid the ultimate cost for the freedom we have in this country. There's no question Congress is screwed. The federal government is screwed. But that doesn't mean you have to be. If the system is jacked up, it doesn't mean you have to be. We can overcome that. But we first got to look in the mirror. We have to get our mindset in order. We got to develop this mindset of, listen, I got to live with gratitude. I got to understand who paid the costs already, right? And then I got to get to work. I got to make a committed decision. And the committed decision is, I'm going to understand what's going on with this economy. I'm going to start understanding financial literacy. And I'm going to make a plan for my life, my family, and I'm just going to get to work. And I'm not going to stop. And for some of the men out there, you may have to turn around and tell your wife, hey, listen, honey, you're probably not going to see me for the next couple of years. I got to put my head down and I got to work. And if that means for the next 2 years, I can get us in a financial position where after that, we can start making better choices and spend better time, then so be it. That's why I work so hard right now, guys. I put out a video every single day, not because I want to do this until I'm 80 years old, by the way. I'm doing it right now because sooner or later I want to get to a point where I don't have to do this. Okay? And I can spend more time. We can go on trips. I can meet people like you in person. We could dedicate a lot of time to in-person events and stuff like that. My point is that we got to pay a price. The people behind me on the screen, they paid a price. Our men and women have paid a price. Why can't we do the same thing? All right, that's all I have to say. I appreciate your guys' attention today. If you guys got value, please like, share, and subscribe. Common Sense Commentary for these uncommon times, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook now, which is great. Share this with your friends, your family, your coworkers, the younger generation. Give them the hope. Give them the optimism. Tell them don't quit. There's a way out of this. Don't look at Congress. They're not going to solve the problem. Socialism won't solve it. It'll make it worse. They have everything they need. It starts with what's happening in here and what's happening in here. All right, guys. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Take care, everyone.